never felt so right about a subject matter as I do now, or a trend or a forecast, if you will. Many of you may have seen, if you haven't, I will actually add it as a video response to this video, my last micro documentary about the real estate market and how it's being pumped up in what is not just a pump and dump like you see with the stock, but a pump and dump of the US housing market. Trillions of dollars that currently is in the pump stage. I want to review that again and talk about first in the context of the big money investors, big money, people that spot these trends and what they do, and how a lot of other investors, whether it's Jim Rogers, whether it's Doug Casey, where they look for these signals and know, okay, this is what's happening. Here's what I'm going to do now. And we're in the middle of one of the biggest ones right now, and I don't want to toot my own horn, but I literally don't hear anyone talking about this. And I have some people that, mainstream media, if you will, that have started to talk about it, but not in the context of putting all, connecting all the dots. But first, let's talk about the stock market. Stock market, for many investors that understand what happens when the Federal Reserve creates excess liquidity, or in this case, basically monetizes the debt. It would be like you and I going, in the basement and counterfeiting money because we've run out of money to spend. Well, that's what the Fed does. And in doing so, it pumps up and inflates the stock market. That's why you see the Dow now over 15,000, may pass over 16,000. The media celebrates this and talks about how we're in this huge recovery, because there used to be a time in America where the stock market was a symbol of the economy, but it's no longer that way. I've talked a lot about how there's only one company still on the Dow Jones from the original 30 companies that were listed. In fact, what happens is companies do bad, they replace them with other ones that do good to keep up the illusion that the economy is in a recovery, or that the economy, for that matter, is growing. But think about when the stock market collapsed back in 2008, 2009, went below 7,000, was in the $6,000 range, and investors, people with forecasting knowledge, or just, that think for themselves, knew the Fed was going to begin to print money recklessly, excessively, to the case where they've increased the balance sheet from $800 billion to now soon approaching $4 trillion. What does it do to the stock market? Well, it inflates the stock market. And even though there's the inflation factor that's eating away at the dollar, there's still investors that were able to make a very, very good return because they knew what was going to happen. Think about gold as well. When the economy tanked in 2008, gold and silver took a hit. In fact, silver went down to about $7 or $8 from the 20s. People that knew, again, the ramifications of inflation, what happens when the Fed prints money, they knew that gold and silver prices would continue to increase in price. That's why people like Jim Rogers, or a good friend of mine, Richard Doty, otherwise known as the Magabu Guru, sold everything he could sell back in 2001, bought gold at $250, and basically has become a very wealthy man off of just his knowledge of what economics do, how they work, how real economics work. Now we're in the midst of one of the biggest ones, I think much bigger than the stock market and the gold and commodity market, and that's the housing market. In my documentary film, I told you how there's a few different stages of a pump and dump. We're in stage one right now, phase one. And phase one includes these different things that I have behind here, where the Federal Reserve has rates at 0%, doing everything they can to fuel another housing recovery. But that's not enough. They're also buying mortgage-backed securities, over $45 billion that they tell us. I believe they're buying even more than that, because they're buying mortgage-backed securities and buying troubled debt over in the European banks as well, who have not recapitalized their banks as they claim U.S. banks have. Big banks and banks across the country, because of the accommodative policies of the Fed and of the current White House, are able to hold a tremendous amount of toxic debt still on their balance sheets, otherwise known as zombie banks. These are loans that are in foreclosure, properties that have been taken back. They don't have an urgency to sell because they don't have to. They have that lifeline of cheap credit backed by you and I, the taxpayer. Big banks have held inventory off the market, increasing the prices because the demand fueled by investors, big money investors most of the time, billionaire investors, hedge funds, sovereign wealth funds are buying real estate in the billions of dollars. I've given those examples many, many times over and over again, whether it's Carlos Slim, John Paulson, Warren Buffett, the Norway Sovereign Wealth Fund, the biggest in the world. They're all putting their money into real estate. Now, this is because we're at that pump stage that will last from, I believe, 12 to 24 months. I believe it presents an opportunity just like it was to buy gold at 2000 or buy gold back in 2000 or to buy stocks in 2009. Now, it's not an opportunity of just buying and holding. It's an opportunity for people to get educated, know what they're doing, and be able to monetize this market in the years to come. Phase one also includes the media hyping the real estate market. And I have two examples here that illustrate this. What will happen is, in my opinion, after the midterm election, as all this money begins to buy up real estate like it's been doing and will continue to do, at some point, the federal government will begin to return back to the loans of 2006, 2005, where anyone can qualify for a loan. This will not only allow the big money players to sell all the property they're buying now into this market, it will also allow the banks that have the trillions of dollars in toxic debt to sell these assets at the height of the market. And as we know, Washington only cares about the big banks. But here's two stories. The Washington Post came out with one the other day. Obama administration pushes banks to make home loans to people with weaker credit. It goes on to talk about how they want to remove down payment standards and have credit scores, subprime credit scores, like we did again. So the Obama administration repeating exactly what happened in the past. Here's another one that I was happy to see with investors.com or Investors Business Daily. It's like a Wall Street Journal, in my opinion, much better. Media helping Obama reinflate the housing bubble. This is everything that I have been talking to you about in the last 6 to 7 months. This is what I do for a living. I am on the front lines of it. And again, just to be crystal clear, this is like buying gold in 2000. This is like buying stocks in 2009. They're reinflating the housing bubble. It will continue. But when the game is over, this collapse of the housing market, which I believe will take place in 24 to 48 months again, will be much bigger than the last housing collapse, because it won't only be the housing collapse, it'll be a dollar crisis and likely a bond crisis as well. Already everyone knows the Fed is in a no turning back scenario. They will continue to monetize the debt, print money, until something happens. But between now and then, there's opportunity for those that look for it. Thanks for watching. Check out FabianForLiberty.com.